Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. It's Monday evening, so it's time to discuss the past weekend of racing over in the US. The third and fourth round of the USCX series took place in Rochester, and with me here as always to discuss the racing is Issam. What's good, Issam?
Everything is good. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy that we're keeping it a little bit down after the great opening that we had with the music, but now we back to the usual.
Yeah, standard opening, but how was your weekend? Enjoyed the racing? Maybe some runs on the program, training a bit, or what's up?
Training on the low, but in terms of the weekend, it was very entertaining. We had a very fast Saturday and a very muddy Sunday, and I think for the organizers, probably I would say in terms of the weather, obviously on the Sunday, it's a bit difficult to have the same spectators that you have on the Saturday, but I think that in terms of what you want as an organizer, I think it's great because then you have just two completely different races. It looked different, and I think for the viewers it was a great spectacle that we had in the races this weekend in Rochester.
Yeah, the racing was good. I must say, yesterday I was a bit tired. Saturday I raced my first ever, well, not first ever, but my first TTT in 2 years. So that was very tiring. And then yesterday I went for a 100k ride with my sister. It was her first 100k, so been a good weekend riding, watching some cross in the evening. Let's dive into the action instead of boring the people with our personal activities too much. So let's start with the men's race on Saturday. We had a flying start for Andrew Strohmeyer. He was the man on a mission after that unlucky race last Sunday in Roanoke, Virginia. It turns out he had 2 punctures there. He was flying at the start, and that caused Ferdinand to crash under pressure. He would not feature the rest of the race. We'll come back to him later in this podcast. We went to a situation where we eventually had 4 leaders. We had Vincent Baestaens, Rouiller, Andrew Strohmeyer and Scott Funston up front. But there were some names missing. Curtis White was missing. He made a mistake just after the barriers, which caused him to crash when remounting. That meant that he did not feature. So we had these 4 riders up front until Funston dropped. Strohmeyer launched a big attack with 3 laps to go, but Rouiller brought it back. Baestaens was hanging behind a bit but managed to come back. We went together to the final lap with those 3 riders. In the final lap, Rouiller launched a big attack on the first section of the lap, but he was rolled back by Strohmeyer. We went to a sprint with 3, and then the most unexpected thing ever happened. Well, not ever, but it was very surprising. On the stairs, Strohmeyer, who was leading, decided to jump the stairs, got passed by Baestaens and Rouiller. Rouiller got held up a little bit, Baestaens stormed to the lead, and then he, from there on, just didn't let the lead go. He took the win just ahead of Andrew Strohmeyer, and Rouiller needed to settle for 3rd. Issam, that last lap was crazy. I am still confused now, and what is it? We're almost 2 full days later. I just can't really get my head around what happened there. It's so unexpected to see somebody pull such a move at such a decisive moment in the race.
It was definitely special to see, and I think I had kind of the same feeling, and probably many with me as well, because he didn't do it during the race. Probably was a move that he had done in the Recon, and he was probably thinking about it. But then to pull it off, it was just a shame for him that it really didn't work out. I mean, imagine if that actually worked and he was able to gain an advantage out of that would eventually give him the win. I think, everybody would be talking about it. It was, that was going to be a crazy story, but it didn't really play out that way. Yeah, in the end, you can argue if it was a smart move to do, because you would have liked to at least try it once. But then I guess, the other riders are going to anticipate you doing it, and if they see that it actually has an advantage, they will try to be in front of you just before the stairs. And I like the surprise element. I've been talking about that a couple of times, that sometimes you just need to have those cards in your pocket and just, pull them out of your pocket when it's the right time. And I think that he, that's why I don't think it was a mistake or something. He just tried something for the win, and it just didn't really work out, and that was a bit of a shame for him. But I don't think that the Baestaens will complain about it, because I think that, what Strohmeyer did there influenced the race in a way and made it a little bit easier for Baestaens to snatch the win there.
It influenced the race completely. It turned it upside down. And as you say, you and I have talked about keeping this big ace in your back pocket and just throw it on the table at the final lap. So yeah, you don't do it before because, as you say, they will make sure to block you on the stairs or whatever. But holy shit, it requires some massive balls to actually jump the stairs like that at the decisive moment. Like, he's been thinking about this that entire final lap, most likely, and okay, I'm gonna do it. But I assume he must have tried this in the pre-ride the day before, and he must have clocked faster than running. I mean, else you don't do it. With the benefit of hindsight, you can say, well, he should have ran the stairs. I do think if he runs the stairs, he takes the win. He looked super strong all day. He raced a bit smarter than he did in Virginia last week. I mean, I know you still have some comments to make on his racing tactics. I will let you do that in a bit. In hindsight, sure, he should have just ran the stairs, just do the normal thing. But at the same time, tremendous amount of respect for actually pulling it off. Now for you, Issam, what did you think of his racing style in general? Was he a bit more composed, a bit more comprehensive way of racing compared to last week?
Not really. And I think, the thing is, I think that after the race, he realizes a little bit that it was not the smartest way to go about it in the race, trying to attack a couple of times. I just think that it is just a thing that he probably doesn't really want to sit in the wheels and wait it out a little and play the tactics a little bit. But, it's part of cyclocross. It's not only the fun tricks and going at it from lap to lap and give it you all. There is also an element of tactics. There's an element of playing it hard. A lot of times you can see that, Baestaens and Rouiller, the guys that have a little bit more experience, they have some tricks. When they were asked to pull, they nod their heads. They're like, no, I cannot really pull at the moment. They do those facial expressions while they probably still have something left. Those are tricks that you have to apply, and they're annoying, obviously, if you race with them. But it's just, if you want to race for the win, you have to sometimes play it a little harder than what he was doing. I don't know if it would have changed the race, really. If you just would save it up for, one attack instead of going a couple of times, who knows? You might actually, crack the guys or actually counter some attacks. That would even... the surprise element will be in that as well. And when somebody already is giving it his all in an attack, you counter them. That is, but you need to have the legs for that and the circumstances need to be right. But I think overall, he admitted himself that he was maybe doing a little bit too much. So it's not even, it's not only my opinion. I think that he himself, thought the same about it.
I still think it was a lot more composed than last week. I think maybe you could make a case that in the beginning of the race he did too much, but definitely towards the end he sat in the wheel. Rouiller did quite a bit of the work there. And that attack with 3 laps to go, I think there's 2 ways you can go about it. I think it's a very smart attack, at least the timing of it. He sees Baestaens is in the lead. He knows Baestaens has been struggling all race. Anytime he or Rouiller went, they would be gone with the 2 of them. If you put Baestaens between yourself and Rouiller, this is a classic tactic. You put the slower guy between you, the 2 of you, and you try and create a gap. It worked pretty well. I think the attack itself is not bad, but what the attack tells me is that Strohmeyer at the moment does not have the confidence to take on these guys in a last lap battle, where I think he should have that confidence on a fast course. I think on a fast course, Strohmeyer at the moment is stronger than Baestaens, Rouiller, Ferdinand, no matter who's there. I think he is the strongest guy on a fast course. But he's still a young guy, last year U23, not used to this situation, so I guess he just lacks a little bit of confidence, and that's alright. But it's something exciting to see. There's a young guy on the scene here Let's hope he can continue, get that win eventually. It should be good. In the end, it just doesn't work out for him. I think if he runs the stairs again, he will win. Now he doesn't. But what did you think about the two other protagonists in that final lap? Rouiller was kind of carrying the race, in control, the strongest rider for most of it. Baestaens on the back foot the entire race, dropped in the final lap, comes back, and then as a silent assassin, he just finishes them off ice cold. He just, I'm in the lead now on the stairs. It's my turn now. Playtime is over. Mr. USCX Series is back. Finishes it off in the sprint. Pretty cool to see him finish that off so cold.
Strohmeyer had that attack, which I think the attack itself was a very good one. But just the way Rouiller came back to him, for me at that moment, I was like, okay, Rouiller is probably the strongest guy here because it looked quite easy. And then after that, Strohmeyer still kept going a little bit. But I think, at that moment, it was, in my opinion, it looked like, okay, Rouiller looks to be the strongest guy. And then I think in the last lap at the stairs, Strohmeyer is in the lead. Rouiller is in second, and then Baestaens is the third guy, the last guy in the group. Rouiller decides to be on the right side of Strohmeyer when he was jumping on the stairs. Baestaens is on the left. Because Strohmeyer doesn't really have a fast patch, he's kind of, stalking a little bit. Rouiller is like, well, I'm okay with being in second, and then from there I can start my sprint. And Baestaens just gets on the inside, and from there he's like, okay, now I need to make the most out of it. And it was perfect for him. And, that is, in a way, it's experience. In another way, how does he know that there is going to be the opening for him to win the race? I mean, there was also a bit of luck in it, but I still think, luck or not, you shouldn't be giving him a chance, and he was given that chance in the last lap, and he made 100% use of that. So it was well played from him, and in the end, it was overall, I think that battle was great to see, and till now I'm still still puzzled by some of the moves in the last lap, but it was great to watch.
Well, it was a split-second decision by Baestaens. It wasn't only luck. You could see Rouiller was in the wheel, didn't really have time to respond to Strohmeyer not getting off. But Baestaens deliberately chooses to choose for the opening on the left, the gap. And of course, it's an easy move, but it's still something he does in the moment. So I think that's where he won the race, very obvious one, but very emotional after the finish, saying that he crashed during one of the trainings, saw a chiropractor 2 times a week. It's his last year racing in the US. Didn't say it was his last year racing in general, but last year in the US can have different meanings. But it was cool to see him win, and it's showing that you should always keep fighting and never give up. The cliche of anything can happen in cross is more true than ever for this win. As you said, Rouiller looked super strong. And I think Rouiller just lacked the course to show his strength. The course here in Rochester, especially on Saturday, was not that challenging. It didn't really have that many technical features. Sure, it has this double trouble, but with all the respect, you're not going to make a difference there. And if you toss this in a European cross race, it's going to be one of the easier sections of the course if you're racing in Namur or in Antwerp or whatever. That part was technical, and you could stretch out a small gap, but the second part of the course with the tarmac, with the longer straights, was just so fast that you could pretty easily compensate for a gap that was drawn out in the technical sections. So that's where Rouiller, just didn't find the course that really helped him win the race, and that's fine, that's racing. He didn't want it to get down to a sprint. He shot the last bullets he had left. He shot them in the beginning of that final lap because he didn't want to sprint. That was that for Rouiller, and third place, he was a bit disappointed, but at the same time, it also wasn't terrible considering the conditions and the course he found there. Then let's look at the entire top 10. Vincent Baestaens with the win ahead of Andrew Strohmeyer and Loris Rouiller, as discussed. A fourth place for Curtis White ahead of Michael van den Ham. Jules van Kempen ended 6th ahead of Lance Heidet. Scott Funston in 8th ahead of Ian Ackert, and the 10th place was for Marcus Shelton. So, Issam, let's talk about Curtis White, the American champion, in 4th place. As said in the summary, he made that silly mistake when remounting his bike after the barriers. That was a very costly mistake, because if he doesn't make that, he joins the leading group and he's actually going to be in the mix for the victory. He came pretty close to joining them in the penultimate lap when the pace dropped up front, but that was a rookie error for a pretty experienced guy.
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, it cost him maybe a potential podium. It was a bit weird, the crash, because you would normally think that you take away the risks when you don't jump the barriers, but you just go over it running. Not for White, at least that time, but yeah, these things can happen. It was a silly mistake from his side, and I believe that he definitely had a shot against these guys for a podium spot. Who knows? Maybe even a win. Baestaens was able to win it, so I think that White, if he was up there, could potentially fight for the win as well. But that is how the racing goes. At the end of it, yeah, it was just not going to be his day, and yeah. There's not much you can do about it other than trying your best, and I think he did just that. But yeah, it was just a bit too much for him to get back to the group and reach them and fight for a podium. It was just too much. So I commend him actually for his fighting spirit, because there are a lot of riders that maybe would have been there like, it's okay, I'm not gonna make it, so I give up. But he kept going and kept trying till in the last lap, the last couple of last part of it, he kind of realized that it was not going to be it. But he really kept going and really kept trying, and that's a championship mentality in a way. So it was good to see.
Well, it wasn't his weekend, because on the Sunday race he made another silly mistake. He slipped on the steep uphill, and that looked very amateuristic. I mean, it happens, but it still didn't look good. Cost him another good placement there, because it happened there just before the chasing group was going to rejoin the leaders. So not his weekend, but it is what it is. He will need to repack himself and get back to next weekend when we are racing in Baltimore. A couple of other names here to mention before we go on to the women's race. Lance Heidett and Scott Funston made their racing return. Saturday's race, fast, was tough, get into a rhythm compared to guys who are already racing. You could see Scott Funston was going pretty well but blew up. Lance Heidett took the different approach, moving through the field pretty nicely. Both ended in the top 10. But finally, I would like to mention Ian Ackert ending 9th here. In the first lap, there was a major hiccup on the bridge. A lot of riders were stalled there. Ackert, as this is his first elite race, was stuck in there, lost at least 20 seconds there, manages to recover from like 40th position all the way to 9th, some very good lap times. Very good result for a first year U23. Of course, bronze medalist winner at the Junior Men Mountain Bike World Championships recently in Glasgow. This guy is talented on the cross bike, on the mountain bike. Without that issue in the first lap, that hiccup, he's just gonna be racing for a potential top 5 here. Probably not 5th, but it would probably be around Jules van Kempen, who, by the way, rode a pretty good race once again here. It's a good result for the young Canadian. Speaking about Canadians, the women race was dominated by one. Maghalie Rochette put on another big show. On the Saturday, she basically dominated from start to finish and took the win. Behind, there was a battle between Caroline Mani and another Canadian, Sydney McGill. McGill moved into second place for a while, but eventually got overtaken by Caroline Mani, so that meant that Rochette took the win ahead of Mani and McGill. Issam, I think we can be fairly short about the Saturday race on the women's side. Rochette just simply a class above the rest.
We can indeed be quite short about it. That was just the nature of the race. It was fast again, and then for Rochette it was just a matter of putting them on the pressure early. That was the plan that she had, and worked out perfectly, because the moment she put them on the pressure, she was able to get a gap, and from there it was just making sure that you bring it home. And another very strong outing from Rochette on the Saturday, and I think at least we had some sort of a battle for second and third with Mani and McGill. Mani just a little bit stronger, I guess. And McGill, again, a very strong race, but just not really enough for second, but still can be very happy with the third place.
Yeah, definitely McGill. As said last week, I suspected that she could maybe need a race weekend or two to get to the level what I hoped / expected she would reach. Things were definitely looking a bit better this weekend. Mani in second, not that big of a surprise on a fast course. If we look at the rest of the top 10, behind Rochette, Mani and McGill, we find Isabella Holmgren. We'll talk about her a bit more when we discuss the Sunday race. Raylan Nuss in 5th, ahead of Kaya Musgrave, Lauren Zorner in 7th, Ella Brenneman in 8th, Emily Shields in 9th, and Greta Kilburn in 10th. Issam, what was up with Raylan Nuss? It wasn't her weekend, basically just like her teammate, Curtis White, but not due to crashes or mistakes, just didn't feature at all at the front of the race on Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, that was not really her weekend in both days. Yeah, wasn't really able to be in the mix at the front from the start. It was just not really there, and yeah, it was not great. It was not great, to say the least. And because of how it went, not being able to start well, and then from there just not really being able to recover from a bad start, you must wonder what would be a reason behind that. Could be fatigue, could be a bad weekend, could be illness maybe even. But I think, with illness you always try to be smart about it in a way. So if you feel that you're not really good, you don't start, I guess, unless the stakes are very high. Yeah, it was just not really her weekend, and just looked off from the start. There was not really a lot of let's just say that if you compare it to last weekend, it was a different Nuss that was racing this weekend in Rochester.
If you have a bad race at the beginning of the season, it always sparks doubts both at the rider, the staff, just commentators like you and I. Did something go wrong in the season prep or whatever? But it's a bit early to tell. It could just be a bad weekend, but if this trend continues, then maybe we should start worrying. But at the moment, I see no point in doing so.
Het gaat hier naar de voorkant. En nu die sprint. Baestaens wint de wereldbekercross in Kokzijde.
It's time for Dutch word of the week, and the Dutch word of this week is diskwalificatie. Issam, what does it mean? Why are we talking about diskwalificatie?
I assume that it is about Anton Ferdinand. No, but yeah, it was Ferdinand. You picked it up during the race, actually, that he was disqualified. There were some stories about it, that it was because of breaking a rule concerning the feeding during the race. So yeah, he did something that was not allowed. I'm not really sure about the ruling there, but maybe you know a little bit better the details about that.
Yeah, so in the first lap or second lap, Ferdinand crashed. I believe it was the first lap. Then he lost his bottle there, and he took a bottle which was handed to him by a soigneur. So he got disqualified for illegal feeding, because that is not allowed. There's a very good thread by Jens Dekker on Twitter, or X I must say now, but you know where to find it. I'll link it in the description. It's about feeding, and there's no official rule against it in the UCI regulations. There's only been a UCI statement regarding feeding in 2015 or something. And Jens makes a fair point. Not only have we come a long way in accepting nutrition and needing to cool yourself in hot races, or taking some nutrition during the race by drinking. Anton Ferdinand was 17 years old when this statement came out. How can you expect riders that are racing now to know that by heart? It's weird. Something should change, but at the end of the day, it's the UCI. Things take super slow there. Like, changing small things or clarifying those things is, if you're trying to turn a oil tanker in the middle of the Suez Canal, that's the way the UCI works. But we'll have to deal with it. Ferdinand said, or seemed to be notified about the rule, said it was a stupid mistake on his own end, but that he had to deal with it and managed to come back pretty well on the Sunday race, which we'll talk about in a minute. First, I will have one final thing to fit in this Dutch Word of the Week segment, Issam, and I apologize to you because I know this is your least favorite part about cross, but need to prepare the followers that are potentially coming to Netherlands or Belgium for racing. So when I was in Mechelen last week, I already got a bit of a taste of the cross music, and if you're going to a cross, this song is currently a pretty big hit in the Netherlands, so be prepared, learn the lyrics, you will be hearing this song a couple of times.
Pizza met tonijn zou de maffia vermoorden om bij jou te kunnen zijn. Vroeger op de markt in Italië heb ik mijn hart verloren aan die mooie Amalia. Vroeger op de markt in Italië.
No.
Keek ze me aan en het was gedaan.
Oh boy. Yeah. Well, that's the part of cyclocross that, if you would ask me, I would ban it. But it's part of the culture, I guess, and it brings something in terms of ambiance in a way to the cyclocross. But everyone has their own taste, I guess.
Manon Bakker agrees with you. She will be racing in Indianapolis and then later in Waterloo, and she gave an interview to Wielerflits saying, "I love the American cyclocross atmosphere. The spectators come there because they love cyclocross. In Belgium, lots of people come to the cyclocross races because they want to drink beer."
I mean, I don't want to bash the Belgians here, but I think that there is definitely some truth to it. I mean, you can see it on the TVs, to be honest. It's understandable in a way because it's a business model as well for the organizers. They earn their fair share of money with, I think, with the consumption of beer. It's part of the racing culture, and it always has been in Belgium. But she's right. I think the culture is definitely different between how the racing is lived, how the racing lives in Belgium and how they are doing it there. And in America, it looks to me, I've never been there, would definitely love to one day see one of those races there with my own eyes. But from what I see, it's definitely a different vibe which is going on there. The people are there coming specifically and only for the racing and for maybe even participating themselves. There are many categories before the elites racing, so I think it's just very different, I guess. And I can see why someone would like that more than the Belgium atmosphere. But it's still, both are great and both have their charms, and it's just great to see that how the sport is truly alive in both sides of the world, I guess.
To avoid going into a super deep discussion about cross culture, I mean, I don't think Issam here is advocating for a ban on beers at cross, but the music definitely is not my thing either, and there's definitely crosses like Diegem or Loenhout where the beer just gets too important, or there's too many people who just solely come to get drunk, and it's no coincidence that the race like Diegem is the one with the most aggressive crowd last year against Mathieu van der Poel. The most middle fingers I've seen thrown at a cross rider in a very long time came from there. So that's definitely, I mean, there's definitely a correlation there, but purely focused on the music, it is not music I listen to on a daily basis or even a weekly basis. It's something I only come across either at a party or just, well, even there, not really, but it's really something I only come across at cyclocross races. Let's go back to the racing, because the Sunday racing in Rochester was actually very good as well. Magali Rochette, who dominated Saturday's race, had a bit of trouble on Sunday. She had a mechanical at the end of the first lap when she had opened a 10-second gap. She was hit back, then managed to come back to the front in the second lap. But by then we had actually a leading group of a couple of riders. Rochette was there, Isabella Holmgren, Sydney McGill, Lauren Zorner and Caroline Mani. 5 racers at the front. McGill and Mani were the ones who were leading before Rochette came back. Then we came in this situation where we were not really sure what was going on. What's up with Rochette? She's not opening a gap right away. She's sitting in here. And then Isabella Holmgren launched an attack. And as she launched an attack, she distanced Rochette. Rochette then crashed. At that point I thought it was game over, but there were more laps remaining than I thought. It was a very long race, almost an hour worth of cyclocross racing, and Rochette managed to repack herself. After a bike change, managed to catch Holmgren again and still took the win ahead of Isabella Holmgren. And for the third place, there was a battle between Zorner and McGill. This time, the roles were reversed. Zorner was in third, McGill was in fourth, and unlike the day before, this time it was McGill who passed the rider in front of her to claim a place higher in the result. So McGill ended third, an all-Canadian podium, with Zorner needing to settle for fourth. Issam, what's your thought on that race by Rochette? It was a pretty weird one, some highs, some lows, but overall still a very good performance by her, showing her form ahead of the World Cup season.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was... it took so long before she was able to put the chain back on again on the bike. And yeah, I think from there it was, she just had to, get yourself again back in a rhythm, which she did quite fast, to be honest. But then you had also an Holmgren who was on a very good day. I think the conditions also suited her. She was able to deal with those conditions very well. And I think, to quote Rochette, she was, finally getting her shit together in a way. And when she was able to do so, she then, was also able to then gap Holmgren and, get back into the lead. But I think it was finally, again, an exciting race in the women category. And it was good to see that Holmgren was also able to fight a little bit for the win, and then in the end had to settle for second, but still a very strong outing from her. And maybe a bit, I don't know about how you think about that, but I think the racing was a bit too long. I guess they probably anticipated faster lap times. But I definitely think that it could have been a lap shorter.
Well, yeah, rule-wise, absolutely. 50 minutes is the rule, but I don't see why women can't race an hour. I mean, I've seen riders advocate for this. I think it's definitely something we can go towards in the future. Women are more than capable of doing so. Of course, you need to keep in mind that the junior women shouldn't do that race, but at the end of the day, the UCI should mandate junior women races. I've been advocating for that for so long already on the podcast. It's a joke that it's mandatory to organize a race for junior men and not for junior women. And of course, the Belgian organizers will always say, oh, but if we organize, there's only 10, 15 riders coming. Yeah, why would you think that is? Maybe because if you don't organize races, girls are not actually thinking it's an option for them. Oh no, it's a male-dominated this. In Belgium, we're tossed in with the U17 boys, get demolished. You need to put in the effort, and if you do that, then it's a long run project. Eventually, girls will come. Cyclocross is not a sport which is only for men or for boys, whatever. But yeah, I mean, overall, sticking to the rules here, definitely one lap shorter could have done. You could see, especially for Holmgren, that the tiredness kicked in those 2 final laps, or 3 final laps even. When they crashed, the live timing actually showed, for me, 2 laps remaining, which is why I thought, oh, Holmgren has this in the bag. 1.5 laps, 2 laps, she can hold that, but it was a bit more than that. I do think, as you say, that after Rochette changed bikes, she was flying on a better thread. You could see that then she was also able to power up the steep climb at the back of the course. Things were going her way, but that should not take away anything from the race Isabella Holmgren put in. She raced her first race on Saturday. Fast course. Holmgren is not a rider that likes a fast course. She's not a rider that starts very fast. She's a bit of a diesel. That's not surprising if you look at the way she's built. Very tall, very thin. It's not a super explosive type. Her sister Ava is way more explosive, but she's still recovering from a collarbone fracture. Holmgren was giving a masterclass on this course, a free one. Everybody could watch and learn. Green is good is what they say, and still, Holmgren was one of the few riders. I saw Kaya Musgrave do it as well. Maybe a coincidence, but I actually don't think it's a coincidence that the 2 young riders are the ones maximizing the course here. You could see her take very, very interesting lines, cutting across, taking shorter radiuses through corners to find that green or taking a wide line. We saw Rouiller do this the best in the men's race as well. We'll come to that in a bit. That was very good to see, and for a first year U23 to put in such a result, very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was great to see. Like you said, it was almost like we were watching a masterclass. A shame that she wasn't able to pull off and get actually a victory out of it. But I think still, regardless of that, it was a very strong outing from her, and also from Musgrave as well. I think that I think the top 5 overall can be very satisfied with their results. It was they were all doing very well for their abilities, I guess, and all kind of finished in the places that they would love to finish at. I think that Holmgren, clearly the one that was going to race in second. McGill was very strong and made sure that the third place was also going her way. And the same goes for Zerner and Musgrave. Zerner that had the bad luck in day 1 of Rochester, and then on the Sunday was able to actually be able to get a top 5. Difficult conditions, and Musgrave as well getting a very strong top 5 for her as well.
Yeah, Zorner had that chain drop in the leading group on the first day. I think that was a shame. Would have been able to clinch a top 5 result there. Manages to come back. Faded a bit towards the end of the race, unlike McGill this time. But yeah, we must say that McGill was also held up by a crash of Caroline Mani at some point, which gifted Zorner the gap. Else McGill would probably have been ahead of Zerner already, but nevertheless, good race by both of them. And then Kaya Musgrave, very exciting prospect, in my opinion, at least, if I judge by what I've seen. And okay, maybe I'm a bit biased. I worked with her last year over the ECA block to Tabor and the Koppenberg. This is a rider that has so much potential, and she's made so many big steps last year as a U19, and even compared to the season before, first junior season, this is somebody who is making very big steps in a very rapid pace, and she's continuing that this year, and that is something that is great to see. So yeah, that was very good, because in that second half of the race, she managed to close that gap to Mani and overtake Mani. I don't really know, Mani, she had that crash, but after that, do you think it was just, oh well, I'm out of the podium spots, I messed up, whatever, I don't really care anymore? It's the first time in over a year she misses a podium spot at the USCX series.
Well, it definitely didn't really go well. I think, like, when you end up going into that negative spiral, that the energy just kind of switches on you, and almost everything goes wrong. You hate what you're doing at a certain point, maybe. I think there was a shot there when she tried to clip in the pedal and was not able to, and the next corner was already coming up, and with one leg not in just struggling overall. And I think that if you are out of your rhythm in a course like this with the weather and stuff, it's just very hard to get back into that rhythm. I think McGill did very well in a crash that wasn't really her fault, because Mani crashed in front of her, and she didn't really had a chance to avoid that. But she was able to continue and get herself back in a rhythm to get herself back into third place. But with Mani, it was the opposite, I guess. It was just getting, it was not great. And I think she kind of realized that as well. Normally she should be doing well, but it was just that day it was not really her day.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then. The top 6 was Rochette, Holmgren, McGill, Zorner, Musgrave and Mani. As I said earlier, not a great day for Nuss again, ending 7th ahead of Emily Shields, Ella Brenneman and Greta Kilburn, who rounds out the top 10. Not really much to say anymore on any of those riders, so let's head over to the final race to discuss, the men's race on Sunday. We had 2 leaders for the first part of the race. Andrew Strohmeyer was off the front together with Anton Ferdinand for a while. It was a big chasing group led by Vincent Baestaens and Lance Heidet for a long while. They managed to come back, but not as a complete group. We went to a situation where we had 5 leaders. It was Rouiller, Baestaens, Ferdinand, joined by the Americans Strohmeyer and Heidet. Curtis White was not there because he slipped on a steep uphill, which we said earlier in this podcast already. So from these 5 leaders, there was a long status quo until with 4 laps to go, Baestaens attacked. This saw Rouiller dropped together with Strohmeyer. Heidet and Ferdinand managed to come back. Then the pace dropped. Rouiller and Strohmeyer were allowed to come back, but with 2 laps to go, Baestaens launched a new attack, and this time he went solo. He attacked on the road section and went to the finish, taking victory. Second place was for Anton Ferdinand, and third place was for Rouiller, who managed to surprisingly overtake Heidet in the final part of that race. No last lap drama here. This time Issam, a fairly straightforward race. Vincent Baestaens simply the best on the second day of racing in Rochester.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was questioning his confidence after the first win on the Saturday. Was saying that he was not really believing in himself, if he was capable of winning a race. And I think it must have given him a confidence boost because, like you said, it was not really having something in the back in the last lap or something. No, he was straight up the strongest. He was racing the smartest out of them all. He didn't really put a lot of wasteless effort into chasing or attacking, and if he chased, he was chasing with his mind. Capable, he knew what he was doing, and he was very I liked the way he was racing. And then just the moment that he attacked, he knew, okay, now I have to give it my all. I will try to win the race here with this attack. And he just, he did that, and that was all he needed to do to win the race. And I think from him, it was a strong outing. Maybe he took the comments that we made from last week a bit personal, but no, I think it's from his side a very strong race. Got the maximum out of it, and I think he can be more than happy with with a win both on the Sunday and the Saturday, of course.
I think for Baestaens everything just came together. In those conditions with a bit of a slick surface, he's always been very good. He loves to race in the snow as well. And this is not comparable to it. It was not that slippery, but it's something that suits him a lot, and the form is clearly improving. I still think that we were not wrong with our thoughts that Baestaens would not dominate these races like he did in the past, and it's true. He's needing to fight for it, and that's only nice to see. Ferdinand in second is kind of what you would have expected. Had that rest after only half a race on the Saturday after that DQ. But then Rouiller, third place, it's not amazing. On the other hand, it's a complete steal because he had absolutely no business in overtaking Heidet in that final lap anymore.
Rouiller was definitely, I think that after the race, the expression that he had, he looked like someone that kind of knew that it was not going to be for him, that third place, but still kind of managed to pull it off with a bad day. I think both Heidet and Strohmeyer in the race looked very strong. I think Strohmeyer might have been opening the race a little bit too fast, got himself a little in trouble, but then was able to get back to the group a little over halfway. But and Heidet was strong the whole race. He was I think that definitely if you look on paper, I guess if you look at how they were racing up until that moment, definitely either Heidet or Strohmeyer deserved that third spot. But that's not how it goes. In the end, you have to finish third, and Rouiller was it's just the experience, just kind of knowing that you still have something left, and was just able to pull that off, and obviously deserved in a way that he was not really in a position to finish in third and still was able to pull that off. So that that is also a skill to make sure to make the best out of your day, and he was able to do that. He made sure that he didn't, that he was going to finish on the podium, and I think fair play for him. And for Hayden and Strohmeyer, not a lot lost. I think those both guys, strong race, and really showed themselves, really, they can be proud of their performances, but, just not really, you cannot really buy a lot with that with a 4th and 5th place, I guess.
Definitely Strohmeyer didn't seem to be in it as much as he was the day before. Heidet, on the other hand, was very strong. I've heard he has some pretty big goals this cyclocross season. And yeah, he should have clinched that 3rd spot, but I think on the other hand, it was just empty in that final lap, so not much more he could do. It's not that he made a big mistake or threw it somewhere. He just lost out to Rouiller, and I mean, one thing Rouiller did during the race I was not a fan of was this corner, the one with the steep downhill on the Saturday, which was now the steep uphill where White tripped. Rouiller was riding that, and I didn't really like that because it was a pretty high risk. He failed once, low reward move. He needed to take a wider line. It just didn't make that much sense to me. He maybe saved a tad energy, but it didn't make that much sense to me. It was kind of telling for his race. It just didn't go his way, but he's a killer, and if he has half a shot at a podium or a win, he will take it. That's how these riders are. Same with Baestaens. The way he took the win on Saturday was exactly that. So yeah, it is what it is, but I think especially Heidet for his first race of the weekend had some startup issues on the Saturday. It was a good race for him, and he can definitely move forward from here. If we look at the entire top 10, we find Baestaens ahead of Ferdinand and Rouiller, then Heidet and Strohmeyer in the rest of the top 5 spots. Michael van der Ham ended 6th ahead of Curtis White, Scott Funston, Marcus Shelton and Caleb Swartz. I think we should briefly still highlight Michael van der Ham here before we stop. He has had a very good weekend, a 5th and a 6th place, not bad at all.
Absolutely not bad, I think quite good actually, and I think you can definitely see, I think Virginia the first day was okay, but not amazing. The second day already was better. And I think as well with Rochester, the first day was good, second day was good. Just a very solid weekend, and I think it's great to see him having those results in his last season. That's definitely one way how you want to end your career, and I think that for him, if he can keep that up, if he can keep that momentum going, it's definitely definitely looking good to how he's going to end his season and his career. But that's still a long way to go. But it's great to see him having a very good weekend in Rochester.
Then, before we completely end this podcast, I came across something funny, and I mean, last week we kind of made a gimmick out of the US with our opening and stuff, but it's generally because it's just fun to see the difference in cultures, and that's also why I'm gonna share this small news report we heard or found from a local TV station near Roanoke, Virginia, who did a short segment on the Go Cross in Virginia last week.
It was the final day of the Virginia Blue Ridge cycling events, although there was a bit of rain that didn't stop the athletes from pedaling on. WDBJ7's Amaya Howard shows us why cyclists choose to compete each year.
Virginia Blue Ridge Cyclocross kicks off the start of the USCX Cyclocross Series in Fallon Park.
It is a closed course where cyclists are doing all kinds of athletic and technical things like climbing up over stairs, hopping over barriers, running through sand pits, going up over this flyover you see behind me. It's a really, really exciting, really fun spectator type of cycle racing.
Kate Pettigo is a manager of the event. She says everyone is welcome to improve their skill set. Pettigo hopes everyone enjoys spectating and participating in the event and can't wait to see everyone next year. In Roanoke, Amaya Howard, WDBJ7.
Well, so far for the local news report, Issam, it's just fun to see the difference in way of reporting, and actually pretty cool to see a local TV station report on it as well. Of course, I know that local TV in the US is a bit different to what we have as local TV here, but nevertheless, still pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's like you said, it highlights a little bit the differences that we have. You're not gonna see that in the Netherlands or in Belgium.
Well, the style of reporting is something we don't see. We do
Yeah.
see, like, especially like the super prestige races. The Belgian news opens with the results and stuff of that. I can definitely share a fragment or a segment of that this cross season, and local news does report on, but not in the same dramatic way. It's more here. It's kind of like it's presented as a big thing. Here's like, oh yeah, just a small race here in Vorselaar or wherever.
Yeah, correct. There's just a different way of how they put it in the news, I guess. But that's it. It's kind of expecting in a way. I think in America you have bigger sports that get a lot of attention, where a lot of money is in. Cyclocross is not one of those sports. While in Belgium you can arguably say that when there is cyclocross, it's veldrijden, then it's huge. I think, what would you say? Maybe in the top 5-6 sports in their country. In the Netherlands, it's not as big, but still has loads of people that follow it. There are the big some big companies that want to invest, that want to put their money in for races and stuff. So it's just totally different. But it's great to see how both sides are doing it and how both sides are getting their things going.
Well, yeah, if you ask people what is the national sport of Belgium, most of them will say cycling or cyclocross. That doesn't make it the most watched sport. I'm pretty sure that's still football, or as Americans would say, soccer. But it's the same if you ask Dutch people what's the national sport, they will say speed skating. It's not the most watched sport or most participated sport, but it's still seen as the national sport, the national thing, in a similar way as American football or just football would be that to a large part of the US. So it's definitely cool to see these news reports, and I always enjoy seeing them. I've seen a couple of low-key reports on French races as well. I always enjoy them. Anyway, Issam, let's wrap up here on a great weekend of racing in Rochester. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks again so much. That is it from Rochester for the third and fourth round of the USCX series, the second weekend. We will be back next week from Baltimore, Maryland to discuss the third weekend for the Charm City Cross. Thanks again and see you soon. Goodbye.